So what supplements have dangerous levels of heavy metals in them? And my name is Matt Cook. In this video, I'm going to show you some actual data based on real studies that will show you some of the most common supplements that you want to avoid and what you can do instead. And what we're talking about in terms of heavy metals are basically cadmium, arsenic, lead, mercury. These are metals that the body doesn't have any use for and it can't get rid of. And in something like cadmium, it just builds up in our system as we get older. And so the faster it builds up, the worse the problem is. And there's no way for the body to get rid of cadmium at all. So you're kind of like in a situation as you get older, you're going to accumulate more and more cadmium. So you want to minimize that. Lead, similar idea with lead, and in some cases arsenic and arsenic, there's some things about it that we'll talk about. So first of all, I'm going to talk about calcium supplements. And calcium supplements are things that tend to be high in lead, actually. One of the things people don't think about, sometimes they think they're going to get calcium with bone broth. I'm going to talk about bone broth separately. So bone broth you really want to be careful of as well, and I'll show you how to make sure it's safe. For calcium, what you want to do is you just want to avoid anything that's mined out of the ground, like calcium carbonate, unless there's a certificate of analysis where they show, and I'll show you what one looks like, where it shows there's really low levels. Because anything out of the ground, typically mined, is going to have high levels of heavy metals. These heavy metals kind of are coincident with the calcium carbonate that's mined, or chalk, basically, that's mined. So there's been a different analysis of all these different brands and types. So here's the conclusion of it. Oyster shell is safe. Most people don't think about oyster shell calcium. It's very, very cheap, and it's safe because the oyster has filtered out the bad stuff, and it has very low heavy metals. Dairy calcium is safe for the same reason. The cow or the goat or the sheep has filtered the bad stuff. So milk and cheese is really, really good and very, very low in heavy metals. Eggshell calcium is safe. You can save your eggshells when you're making eggs and put them in a little bowl in the microwave with a little water and boil it for a few minutes to sterilize them. Then you be careful, it's hot. Take it out when it's cooled. And you can put the eggshells that you've sterilized on a cookie sheet, pull the membranes off if they usually are much easier to pull off when it's already been boiled, and then just dry them out in a maybe 300-degree Fahrenheit oven for 10, 15, 20 minutes. Let it cool, and then you can grind them in a coffee grinder that you use just for things like this. Don't use coffee in it, and make a very, very fine powder. And about a quarter to a half teaspoon a day is a very safe way to get a lot of calcium. Very, very low in heavy metals. So this is a certificate of occupancy. This is a product that I've been testing, and it shows 1.5 parts per million, not more than, for arsenic. That's a little high, but that's kind of normal for a lot of supplements these days. It's one reason why you don't want to just depend on supplements. The other stuff, like the cadmium, is not as bad, but I'm not greatly excited about taking large amounts of the supplement for a long period of time because of that. The actual result here, this is the specification, what it has to have, what they guarantee it as. The result is really fine. But if you look at the specs, it's within specs, but the specs are actually not that safe. But it's 0.07 parts per million arsenic. That's perfectly fine. So basically, this supplement's okay. Now, let's talk about bone broth. You can buy bone broth, and if it's been simmered a long time, it's not safe. It has a lot of heavy metals in it. If you make it at home, don't simmer it more than maybe a half an hour. Don't think that you're going to be able to simmer bone broth for hours and hours, because the lead in the bones will come out in the broth. And I'm in the process of learning which ones are safe from the manufacturers, so I'll be able to make recommendations. Okay. Zinc supplements. So we've covered calcium, covered bone broth. Now let's cover zinc. Zinc is the most unacceptable one to supplement because almost all zinc supplements come from mining. Zinc and cadmium are found together. Cadmium is very, very dangerous. If you do use zinc, the one to use is zinc gluconate, which has the least amount of heavy metals in it, but you might want to think about not using zinc for a long period of time anyway. One thing about zinc is that in the body, zinc and copper are kind of competing with each other, and when you supplement zinc, you generally become deficient in copper. So I will give you a replacement for supplementing with zinc because I don't think it's a good idea. Now, let's talk about herbs to watch out for. There's two really that you want to watch for. Tea, any kind of herb that relies on tea, extracts of tea, green tea, black tea, or, and I mean real tea, not herbs, or button mushrooms. So basically, tea has a very large amount of fluoride in it. Fluoride is picked up by the tea plants and where it's grown, and it concentrates it. It's probably 3 times more fluoride than you should have in a day, and just like an average cup of tea. So tea really isn't a great thing to be drinking a lot of. And in countries like China, where they do drink a lot of tea, they tend to have issues from too much fluoride. Fragile and brittle bones, for example, and also low thyroid. Tea will really depress your thyroid. It's enough fluoride to be very depressing on the thyroid function. Mushrooms will almost always have a good amount of arsenic in them. There's no way around it. It picks it up in the ground and from the feed, from the everything. It's very common for mushrooms to have 1.5 parts per million of arsenic. It's not dangerous. For one reason is that there's a lot of benefits of mushrooms, and I eat a lot of mushrooms. Arsenic is an organic form, which is much less harmful than the inorganic form. So I think on balance it's good, but it's just something to be aware of with mushrooms. But what you might want to do to protect yourself in all this, eat calf's liver once every week or two. Calf's liver has all sorts of micronutrients, zinc, copper, in the right balance, and also many, many vitamins and things that we don't even know exist yet. Oysters is a way. If you don't eat meat, you can eat oysters once a week. They can even be canned oysters, but the oysters have a lot of nutrition in them that you can't really get any other way, especially copper and zinc. Consume plenty of dairy products, and maybe consider having an egg every day, the whole egg, because eggs are very high in choline and will have a lot of nutrition and things that you can't get any other way. Hope you found this report very helpful. It's Matt Cook, and if you haven't already, you might want to subscribe to my daily medical discoveries. I'll put the link below. And if you haven't already, you want to grab a copy of my book for free. It's $29.95 on Amazon. It's Healthy to 120. Every single page is packed with the results of decades of research that I've done of how to live decades longer than you otherwise would, healthy, happy, and sexy. Just help me out with the shipping. It's free, totally free. Look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you so much.